In this Camera2 API tutorial using the Kotlin programming language, we're going to be making a connection to a camera device. Welcome to Mobile Application Tutorials. My name's Nigel. Okay, so in the previous tutorial we went through the steps on how to get an ID to a camera device, whether or not it's forward or rear facing and forward facing lens, just how to select a particular lens. And so that's what we did. You can see that that's number 3 here. And number 4, we're actually going to make a connection to a camera device so we can get a configured camera device. Once we've got a configured camera device, we can then start our capture requests and set up a camera capture session. Okay, but first of all, we need to make a connection to that. And we've got one of the pieces in the puzzle, which is the camera ID. We now need to set up a background thread. It's a good idea to set up a background thread. We also need to set up a camera device callback, which will notify us when we've got a configured camera device related to a specific ID. And currently you can see all these episodes here. They are being released on this channel to the public YouTube channel on a weekly basis, but they all are available at this moment in time as we speak. So if you do really want to get hold of all these episodes straight away, you do need to pay a fee, a one-off fee of $10 US, and that will also include number 6 and 7, which will not be made available on YouTube. They're just there for the premium members of this site. Okay, so we'll make a start. So let's go into our Android Studio. And so we've already got the camera ID. We need that to make a connection. We're also going to set up a background thread now, as well as the camera device callback. But let's do the background thread stuff first. Okay, so I'm just going to create a couple of variables here, and one to represent the background thread. And what's that going to be? A handler thread. So that's going to be off the type handler thread, and we'll create one for the background handler, which is what we use to send requests across the thread. So background, and that will be off the type handler here. Okay. Now we're just going to create a new function down here just to start the background handler. So it will be private. Let's put a little space there. So it will be private. It's going to be a function and start background thread. It's not going to take any parameters or return anything. Okay, we'll call our background thread first. We need to set that up. And so that's of the type handler thread. We'll give it a name. That's going to call this something very basic. You might want to be a bit more specific in your application name. So actually, let's call it Camera2 Kotlin. Specific enough. Okay, what I'm going to specify here is to start this thread up once it's been created. So to do that, we'll call the start. This is happening inside a Kotlin lambda, and you also need to specify the also just to let it know that you're making a request for that handler thread. Okay. Let's do a bit of work on the background handler itself. That's basically it's a request object that we send to the thread. So it's of the handler type. We call the background thread. We call the background threads looper, which is where we want to send our message request, our handler message request across to. Okay, that should be all we need to do for the start background thread. If we start a background thread, we should stop it. That's important. So let's create a method to stop the background thread. First thing I'm going to want to do is call the background thread quit safely. And so that should stop the thread and the loop associated looper as well. And now let's call our background thread again. And I'm just going to call the join, which is to kill the thread. Now if we look at join, select it, press F1. So as it says, it waits for the thread to die. Important thing here is if the thread has interrupted the current thread, the interrupted status of the thread is cleared and this exception is thrown. So it's a good idea just to set up a catch harness for the interrupted exception. Change that to interrupted exception, and let's just let's do a log error check here with the tag and e dot to string, so we'll display that to string. Okay, so we've got these two background threads. We do need to start and stop them. Best place to do that is in the fragment lifecycle. So start background thread should be called from on resume. And let's call it the top here, start background thread. And stopping it should be called from on pause. I don't think I've yet implemented an on pause, so we'll do that now. And just here we'll call stop background thread. Okay, so that's our background thread implemented, and it's a good idea to use that for when you're creating a connection to a camera device. So let's move across to actually creating the camera device state callback. So we'll create a variable for our camera device actually. I'll use the late in it. It's going to get initialized later and it's going to be a variable so it can be writable. We'll call this camera device. And it's going to be of the type camera device. And we also need to create a value for our device state callback. Let's make a private value. We'll call that device state callback. And we need to set up an object expression for that, the Kotlin way. And we'll call the camera device class state callback and put some curly braces at the end there. Okay, and we're getting a issue here. If I press Alt Enter on the Mac, it says implement members, and we do want to implement those three members there. We'll start off with the first one. So let me do a check here, because as you can see, a camera device could be of the type null, so let's check for that. So if camera is not equal to null, this is like doing a null safety check. We can just set our camera device equals camera. Okay, and while we're there, let's just put in a debug log so we can see what's happening. The camera device opened, was successful. Okay, let's move down to the on disconnected. Put a log there. Camera device disconnected, just to let you know that something's happened that's made it disconnect. And if it's disconnected, we can call our camera close basically. Will have to be a safe call, so we'll put the question mark there. Okay, and let's implement the on error as well. So put a log, debug log for that. camera device error. Okay, let's handle that. So to handle that, we can close the application. So we can do this dot fragment, and then we can actually call our activity. Activity is going to have to be a safe call object and call finish. So we'll shut it down. Something terrible's happened, and so we've had to close this. Okay, and so that's the implementation of our camera device object. And if everything's successful, we will have opened our camera device, and that's when we can assign it to our camera device variable. Now we can make the call to make a connection to our camera device. So if I search for, we created a function in previous tutorial, connect camera. And so this is where it's going to happen. So we'll call our camera manager. Open camera. First parameter it wants is camera ID. We got that from the previous tutorial. There it is, that device ID. Second one, it wants the device state callback. That's what we've just created straight before. So device state callback. And third one is a handler, and we've also created a background handler as well. Okay, that should be fine. We are getting an error here. Okay, so we've actually set up permissions in a couple of tutorials back, so this will run. But what I do want to check is if we just press F1 on that, bring up the documentation. I just want to see, so I'm just going to look for a camera access exception here. Something does go wrong, so I will put a trap harness around that. Change that to camera access exception, and we'll just log that as an error. I'll put in tag. Okay, this will still run here. This is fine because we've set up the permissions before. It's the lint inside Android Studio which is not able to dig down or traverse far enough to see that we've actually set up the permissions, because we set up permissions down here using the Easy Permissions API. So we'll have to ignore this for the moment because it will work. If it doesn't work, if you don't have exceptions, Android OS will stop you. It's not going to let you successfully make this call if you haven't had the user grant permissions for the camera. And there's another exception I want to catch as well. If we scroll on down here, there's an interrupt exception I want to set up. It's not displayed here, but and it's an interrupted exception. So put another error log here. And I'm just going to put open camera device, open camera device interrupted while opening. It's a sort of edge case here. If something interrupts our camera, it could be another camera device, a high priority camera device, just going in during this process. So we just want to log if that possibly does happen. It should not happen during this particular tutorial series, but it could potentially happen if you've got another number of camera applications and some of them are running on background threads, or there's high priority ones going on. You can get this sort of conflict. Okay, so that's all we should need to do at this stage. So let's run this and see if we can get a successful connection to our camera device. And it's a good idea to look at the debug output here and just hear camera device open. So we've got a configured camera device. So we can now move forward and create a capture session using that camera device and start our preview capture. So that's good. And you can see the previous previous output logs here as well, such as the device ID 0, because we're going to be using the rear facing camera. And that concludes the making a connection to our camera device using the Kotlin programming language. And as we saw here, there's 3 things we need to get set up before we can make a connection to a camera device. And that camera device represents either the rear or forward facing camera. So we need to set up a camera ID to specify that the facing camera. We also added a background thread so we could actually do this off the main UI thread, so that's an important consideration to be aware of. And the other part was actually setting up the camera device state callback, and that would inform us whether or not we're successful. If we're successful, we do get a configured camera device object that we can use, and we also set up the on air and on disconnected callbacks as well if something does go wrong or if the camera device is closing. And so that completes this tutorial series. Don't forget, we're in number 4 at the moment. All these episodes are currently available on the site for professional membership, or you can acquire them for a one-off fee of $10, and it's only the professional members and the people who do buy this plan who get number 6 and 7. They are premium tutorials. Okay, and if you do need to get hold of me, CodeMentor is the way to go. I provide paid consultancy support, so be aware of that. Just don't go asking questions. I'm going to sort of say, let's set up a paid session sort of thing, because I don't have any free time to speak. I'm quite busy at the moment, so use CodeMentor. I do have Twitter and I do have Facebook accounts. I'll put my handle up there, so I do put all the announcements related to my channel, including video releases, to the Facebook and to Twitter, so it's a good idea to follow those if needed. And don't forget, if you do want to get updates and you just follow me on YouTube, don't forget to click on that subscribe button. Anyway, that's it for this one. Thank you for taking the time for watching. Bye for now.